Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky. I'm coming on to talk to you about the equinox of 2023. This will be happening on September 23rd, 2023. But like any of the four major waypoints of the year, the two solstices on the 21st, usually of December and June, and the equinoxes on usually or around the 21st of March and September. We have such a wonderful opportunity to check back in, regroup, rebalance, and understand the way that life is shifting and changing. And this year in 2023, it is at a high point. Okay, you guys, we have a lot to talk about in this video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. Check out the description box for this channel's offerings. And yes, this is just going to be a nice, intuitive stream of consciousness as I feel in abundance of intuition coming in about this topic. So if you guys have some nice coffee or tea to drink or whatever you like, sit back and enjoy, or feel free to journal at the same time. Let's dive straight into it. So Equinox 2023. This is truly a mile marker for a lot of people this period of time. There's going to be a lot of things coming into people's lives that signify an identity shift. Okay, so have you guys noticed in 2022 and 23 a major kind of conflict in the zone of identity, in the zone of ego, in the zone of categorization, and the matter or the real life material components of what make people who they are. We've had a major growth, actually I think since the time of 2020 when we had that triple Capricorn conjunction, of people feeling a desperation or feeling some kind of lack of viability. Therefore, there was a clinging or a new attachment formed to certain either material or ego-focused constructs that kind of served to, at the level of self, remind people who they were. That is changing here. Okay, I'm seeing during this time a lot of changes in ownership. I'm seeing a lot of changes. Also, for example, things which have been long-running aspects of your life, especially in the material zone, right? We have this triple retrograde Earth trine happening, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, Uranus and Jupiter going retrograde in Taurus, and then the Mercury retrograde in Virgo, which has concluded by the time of this video. Nonetheless, we are coming from that shadow period and understanding the significance and meaning of that retrograde Earth trine. So it feels like this equinox point as we move into equal day and night here, fall in the northern hemisphere, spring in the southern hemisphere. It feels like people starting to build new identities that are less based on ego and starting to really also lock in the truly unchanging. So this is a highly destabilizing time, you guys. I'll be talking a little bit more about this in the October Comprehensive Astrology, so yeah, be sure to subscribe below. But I feel that this is a period of time where the material world is not going to be likely to house or harbor our own feelings of security. Okay, a lot of times humanity will look to the material to provide security, right? And that's not totally untrue. You know, shelter, food, water, money, status, resources. We work with the elements. We work with the earth in order to sustain. So it's not that logic is flawed, because there's a reason why people have generated certain identity and ego constructs tied to resource or materialism. It's just that here in September of 2023, that is changing because consciousness can't actually, okay, this is interesting, random download, human consciousness can no longer comprehend in totality the needs of the material world. Therefore, what that means in a more mundane way is a lot of things could run down, a lot of things could not be properly maintained, a lot of things could be kind of like lacking in capacity. So the money buys less. Okay, it doesn't work. It doesn't fulfill the need. There's also a likelihood of any type of material structure with Pluto at this difficult, old retrograde point of Capricorn. It's like old buildings, old structures, not being able to hold up at a foundational level. But then we have the body, okay? The human body, which is at a really powerful point of transformation and an increase in health, if you like. So we have this really dichotomy forming here between a rejuvenating and healing human form and body and a disintegrating, depreciating material context. This is, to me, polarity in view as a certain landscape for a lot of people, where they're kind of choosing sides. A lot of people are choosing, okay, I base my well-being on my material status. Then another group of people saying, I base my well-being on my body or on the health of my mind, body, and spirit. And everybody, I think, is called to, in some way, look to both of these polarities and understand and take stock where things are at. But intervention, okay, is the sliding scale during this time of how do we react. Okay, so what do I mean by that? That's a kind of a strange combination of words. This is where people will either do a lot of good or bad during this time, is in how or how not they choose to intervene in these situations. So, for example, run down material circumstances. Okay, do we do a big restoration or renovation? Okay, depreciating health quality. Okay, do we take on a different kind of like diet or different kind of circadian rhythm? I feel that the answer is yes to most of these things, but it's important to know the order of the sort of like the hierarchy of the way these situations work. So without the body, the plan for the material can't work. I think that a lot of people get kind of skewed and they start putting like the material as the sort of nucleus of importance in their life, and then that's when the body starts to depreciate. And that's when, yes, you might start to see like, okay, there's a restoration or a kind of like material incline, but then like a physical wellness decline that happens. Whereas the natural order right now would see the opposite, like a material decline and wellness incline. And what we as individuals are faced with during this equinox period is balancing out these choices and the actions that are taken right now, and even the thoughts, okay, even the way that the mind is comprehending these situations and scenarios will determine a lot of karma for the future. What do I mean? Okay, so the degree of desperation that people feel right now can get locked in for better or for worse. So if there's a feeling of impoverishment, if there's a feeling of lack, if there's a feeling also of declining resourcefulness, that can really get locked in here. So what I recommend you guys, again, we're talking high quantum philosophy here, bringing this down to like more comprehensible action. This is a really good time to prove to yourself your own resourcefulness. Some things are too far gone for individuals to really catalyze a different momentum. You know, we don't want to see a fast-moving train and get so egotistical that we think, okay, I'm going to step in front of it and stop it with my hand. Rather, we have to observe the fast movements and understand, okay, what's the end point? Where's that going? And careful for holding yourself liable, for example, like needing to slay dragons, needing to do really impossible feats, okay? This is already coming up because, yes, a 2024 year cycle, we have a dragon year, of course, coming up in 2024. People are already kind of generating these, like, egos, okay, in some cases, starting to write new stories for themselves, comprehending themselves differently. This can be done very healthily, especially if you've had a lot of like natural endings in your life. You can really start to kind of regenerate your own personal narrative, but careful with assuming certain liabilities, okay? So like I have to be the one to halt the momentum of that like 2,000-ton train or something. This is where we start to see certain like grids of narcissism or certain grids of sort of or misplaced ego becoming dangerous, all right? And also it can quash a lot of stories as well as, like, for example, somebody tries to over-assume some type of authority, or somebody has too much confidence in their own capacity, steps out on a limb and the limb breaks, okay? And this changes the narrative, all right? That's something that we're going to be seeing, quick changes in narrative based on people's choices to operate through healthy or unhealthy ego, basically here. That's perhaps another conversation for another day, but healthy versus unhealthy ego, it's really not the right concept, because we have all of these like sort of very modern like psychological belief systems or sciences that have determined what this is. But when I'm saying this, I'm meaning like perception of who someone is at the self level, like who am I? What do I do? How am I seen? What am I generating or expressing? And how is that perceived by others? To me, that's kind of like how people are viewing their own egos or their own expressions during this time, which is not quite the same as, so in this way, ego is perhaps not the exactly right component, but I can't really think of another sort of concept to describe this. What is happening here, though, is a change in story, all right, and a change for most people in identity, and a challenge as well. Let's shift into another intuitive message that I have here. This is a challenging time, you guys. This is an everything time. That's a little colloquialism that I have on my channel, an everything time. So it's one of those periods of time where you can't be hyper-focused into singular of areas. You have to have a sort of comprehensive wellness plan in place. You can't, during this time, we have Mars applying up towards the South Node, okay, in Libra. We have the Sun, which will move up to the South Node as well in October in Libra. So it's an illumination of how to be more balanced as people. This equinox is going to paradigm shift into a more balanced everything story. So for those of you who are kind of eccentric, or for those of you who have many rods in the fire, many projects, many different status connotations, many different egos, okay, well, it's time to pray, all right, because you're going to have to somehow fulfill all of these different expressions, or reduce them, and in some cases eliminate them. Okay, so we have a high time of elimination happening here during this period. We've had a retrograde Pisces Virgo axis that we came through in the beginning of September, with Mercury retrograde in Virgo, Saturn retrograde in Pisces. I've made a T-chat about this on Patreon. I'll link that below. What that caused was this kind of realization for a lot of people that there had to be an entirely different conscious focus from the small micro details to the macro experience. So a lot of people were focused on the wrong things. A lot of people, what that indicated alongside the retrograde Earth was misplaced focuses, also nervous habits, okay? At this equinox point, September 23rd, 2023, there's going to be a, for some people, harsh paradigm shift, for other people, very rejuvenating, where the focus is going to shift onto the more proper center point, meaning that we're going to naturally be blessed to actually look at what the true root or true nucleus of certain situations is, rather than falsely imposing certain ego-based ideas as the nucleus. So what this means at a mundane level is, rather than doing something philanthropic to increase your celebrity, now you help people without gratification. All right. Such things as that. Do you get what I mean? Like when people do things with a certain like corrupted or unresolved, unresolute goal in mind, that becomes the nucleus, and it disrupts the entire cellular situation going on there. So I've talked about a sort of cellular shift that we are having during this time, and it's not so easy, especially for those of us who are in a particularly unconscious place where we have a lot of like nervous habits, or we have a lot of especially like ancient traumas that are still part of the equation. It's one thing if you've had like really hard experiences in the recent times, like all grief and bereavement has to have its own cycle. But one thing that was really hitting me for a lot of this year was this. I was seeing like, and a lot of us here, a lot of you here on this channel who would be listening to something like this, I was seeing very old traumas coming up to the forefront. 2023 does evoke an energy of a shadow process, but it has to kind of find a new conclusion here, because a lot of you who have these old traumas, like I'm talking 7+ years at this time, the quarter return of Saturn, and even longer, okay, half returns, okay, 15-year cycles, 30-year cycles that are still coming up here. Congratulations, this equinox point will probably, perhaps like rebrand or recategorize this as something else so that you can move on, reduce, and refill some of these energy focuses with what you truly need as a person. And yes, also this is a more fiery period of time than perhaps many people are realizing. This Mars application happening, applying to the nodal axis. Not only will it be conjoining the South Node, but of course it will be opposing the North Node in Aries. So Mars is a very fiery natural ruler of Aries, okay, and subsequently Scorpio, opposing the North Node in Aries, with Chiron in Aries as well, all right? It's perhaps not the most like grand fire energy. You know, we don't have a lot of Sagittarius and Leo energy coming through at all. But it's nonetheless going to cause a diminishing effect, as the fire element is a destruction, right? It reduces and diminishes whatever it touches. So there's something of that, and this is going to come in the area of mindsets and what we're filling our mind up with. There's going to be another reduction along these lines, and through this equinox will create a lot of room, okay? It's good to get problems off the table, okay? Relieving yourself of problematic situations, okay? About 80% of this new nodal axis we're in also just deals with like knowing your triggers, or knowing who is a problematic person in your life, and perhaps not necessarily needing to engage what we already know as problems. The North Node in Aries can get really like tied up in adolescent problems. So it's better to just be more filtered during this time with who we are connecting to. And I think that we are tested during this time along the lines of, can we acknowledge the way in which we've evolved? Can we actually act and make choices in line with some of these new conclusions, in line with the ways that we've changed, because that is adapting who we truly are, rather than relying on some type of ego communication or false premise or storytelling to hopefully push it through. So you get what I'm saying here. It's like actually acting and actually choosing what is in front of you and what isn't is the better place of power here, rather than trying to show someone who you are or trying to communicate specifically to people who are disagreeable or oppose you, rather than trying to impose who you are to them, or rather trying to convince. Do not convince during this time. Do not feel like you have to be persuasive here. A lot of the problem that we have right now is this like persuasiveness or this convincing component that is like so hungry to be understood. So we have to understand ourselves here, and we have to also understand the youth of our own spirit. I'm seeing a lot of people with this ancient Pluto retrograde in Capricorn trying to like mute a lot of their inner feelings, or trying to be so grown up, you know, trying to be so mature, trying to be so responsible, trying to carry so much weight, but it's not already carried. It's not natural. It's not meant to be ordered in some cases. So careful about overburdening yourself here. This equinox point should be a nice kind of relieving reduction of burden, all right? Recognition of natural order, recognition of what happened and understanding how we can work with that, but not necessarily exacting any kind of like forcefulness onto these situations. The time for forcefulness was that Saturn-Uranus square back in 2021. That was a time to push our own boundaries. That was a time to like make something happen in our lives and really, you know, be that. This is very antithetical to that here. Okay. There's really there's no need to put that out because the natural cycle has us spiraling kind of into a more receptive place and also a more spiritual place. So what will conflict with that are these kinds of like forceful ego narratives, right? These persuasion grids, these also insatiability is very obvious here too. Needing too much from other people, needing too much validation. Contrarily, okay, this is cool. Validation is going to be abundant for people who are allowing themselves to harmonize well with the natural momentums. So you can kind of let that be a test for you here during this equinox point as we're rebalancing our energy, regrouping, rebudgeting our day and night energy. How much validation are you having? Are people kind of like reciprocating your narrative? Are people also supporting you? Are people supported by you? Okay, are people, or it doesn't even have to be people, okay? This can also be you just at a level of self being behind yourself or against yourself. You can really feel it here. If it's going right, it's going to be validation, validation, validation. And also, yet new relationships can start during this time. Great new friendships also. It's an interesting period of time for soul tribe connecting points, all right? It's an interesting relationship generating time of all varieties. Friendship, romance, professional. With Mars applying during this equinox, right, we have this balance point between the day and night energy. Mars approaching the nodal axis. This is like, for some people, a gift or a delivery of a very strong support here and validation. If you're moving in the right momentum, if you're not, it's going to be not just isolating, but it's going to feel like the choices or all the energy, the energy spent is like not yielding enough, okay? So I'm sure that all of us have something to learn on both sides of that equation. But just keep an eye out. Very synchronistic period of time as well. And it's easy to change things too if you wanted to. Some people don't recognize also the resources that they have. So at the beginning of the video, I was talking about how there was like this resourcefulness and there was people like not being resourceful enough. Well, I feel the polar opposite as well. People, and this is also the same thing, this is not being resourceful. So not knowing what you have, not using what you have, telling yourself stories about lack and limitation, and therefore not being resourceful. All right. It can go the opposite way though too, like not knowing where things are, not having enough, and then like not being resourceful. So I think the key word for this time is resourcefulness, but this is going to be a growing lesson that's learned over this next like year and a half period of time. And this equinox point is going to really like activate a lot of that. But anyway, everyone, I think I'll conclude there. I hope you enjoyed this nice intuitive stream of consciousness about the 2023 fall equinox. We are now moving into the season of fall here in the Northern Hemisphere, which I love so much. Hit the like button below if you're interested in more videos like this. Also comment, let me know if you have any fun equinox plans. What are you doing this fall or spring down in the Southern Hemisphere? And keep the bell notifications turned on. Keep subscribed to this channel. There's a lot of great content coming soon. I will talk to you all later. Bye.